You're listening to the Equip Podcast, a ministry of Austin Ridge Bible Church. To learn more about upcoming Equip classes and events, visit www.austinridge.org/equip. Hi, everyone. Today on the show, we're talking about a topic that is very applicable to our lives in 2020, how following Christ changes the way we should and should not interact on social media. Joey, Jeff, and Lori are back together for this discussion, along with our host from last week, Stephen Hill. I really appreciated their honesty and the personal stories they brought to the table, and I hope you do too. Enjoy.
All right, so we're in a season, how to be a Christ follower in 2020, and all the different things that come with that. We were talking about this topic or this subject, and we kept talking around the idea. We couldn't really come up with a good title. So the best thing we could come up with was, how to be a Christ follower and not be that guy. Mm-hmm. And we're going to explain that phrase in just a little bit.
So sexist.
Oh, see, you're calling me out right here. So
it's right there in the title.
There's that girl too.
Okay,
let's be real honest about
was
that.
Was I just that guy? Was I just that guy by calling that out?
Exactly.
Nailed it.
Yeah, I mean, episode over. Right, don't do that.
Thank you for watching the round table. Go to
yeah. And so, how not to be that guy or woman? I don't know. When it comes to particularly conversations on social media, we become very brave behind the keyboard in our culture in this day, and we get very loud. And unfortunately, Christ followers are the biggest culprits, and we call something out that is not done with grace or love in mind.
Or the other side of that is because everybody else is so loud, I get completely quiet.
Sure.
And I never respond to anything. I think that there's a flip side of that as well.
Yeah.
I think we're the biggest culprits, or you think we just look so much like the world that it's...
Yeah. No, that's true. I guess it does. It's more, I think to me, as a fellow Christ follower, it's more glaring and stands out more like, I kind of... not expect, but like it's one thing, for people not in the church or not Christ followers to do it, but now you're doing it, and man, it just looks really
people notice that. Yeah. So there was an article in the HuffPost, which is admittedly a liberal magazine, but it was on social media use among Christians, and it said social media where the Bible goes to die, and it just had all these explanations or examples of prominent people that we all know and listen to and read and learn from, and people that are not perfect, but who we would say, I like listening to them, and examples of posts they'd had or interactions they'd had that just fly in the face of the truth from God's word. And a non-believing world is watching how we engage in this, and we're not. There's room to improve for us.
And for me, it's how I'm not engaging. I just interrupted you twice, but really, that's. I just don't engage. I'm just out. And so I feel like that's something I need to work on too. I'm looking forward to you guys saying, well, let's think about when do you and when don't you?
Yeah, that's good. So speaking of which, subject matter expert, Stephen Hill. No, you don't want to be known as that. But our young adult pastor here at our church and runs our intern program is joining us today, and we're grateful for that. So let's define, as best we can, how would you guys define being that guy? What are some examples you've seen? What drives you crazy on social media? We're going to get to our own examples of this and how we've been that guy, but let's not jump there too quickly. So how would you guys
Can we talk about
it?
how Jeff has been that guy?
Oh, nice.
Or do we just have to tell our own examples? Can we tell one of y'all's examples?
In real
I didn't know if we could only point out our own or if we are pointing out each other's.
Integrity is what it is, man. Integrated.
The same.
Yeah.
All right, someone define it. Anyone define it?
Oh, someone. I thought you were going to define it.
No, I'm not going to.
Being that guy. Man, just thinking you've always got the answer.
That's good, yeah.
And feeling like everyone should know that. Is probably the thing.
Should know it, agree with it, and if you don't, you're an idiot.
Because it's one thing to kind of assume you're right. I mean, that's one category, but when you go, and because I'm right, I should tell everyone. Everyone should agree with me, and any kickback, that means they're wrong, and I got to come back harder. And then pile on, and
No, it's good.
That's what I think of too. Sorry. I think of pile-on guy. When I think of that guy, that's sort of the term that comes to mind is you don't know when to let well enough alone. Like just we have hit point where we're done.
For like, it's the opposite of, and I see this in my life in past social media interactions. It's the opposite of James 1:19, like where we're called to be slow to speak, slow to become angry, quick to listen. Yeah. We literally do the exact opposite of all of those things, and we're pecking at a screen instead of engaging in real conversation.
Yeah, one thing I notice a lot, especially on Twitter, it's like the world's worst platform,
or it's my favorite,
or the best example of this. What we're talking about is probably depending on how you look at it. But yeah, I love it too. It's like a guilty pleasure for me. But it's like kids on there sometimes. It's like, well, I said this, but here's what everyone else in the Twitterverse heard. Yeah, but that's not what I meant. I said, and they just restate it, and they will just like dig their heels in. Yeah. It's like, I'm not moving from the way I said it, because the way I said it is most important, not what you take away from it. It's like dealing with a kid.
It's amazing that we live in a world that's so educated and yet so dumb. I mean, like I just wonder, like, how come people don't understand yet? And I'm guilty of it. So I'm saying to me, like, how come I don't understand that when someone has a different opinion, that like I'm not going to yell loud enough to change their mind, or B, that they come from a different background. There's so many different layers for why people think the way they think, and I don't know. It's just interesting that we still struggle.
Or
with
God
that.
forbid, they might actually be onto something.
Yes,
and I need to take a deep breath and like consider what they actually said.
Right.
You know,
right? No, that's really good.
We'll never do that with an all caps posture.
Right. Yeah.
All caps posture. You need to use that.
I like that.
That's good.
ACP. I'm writing it down.
Yeah, I just put thinking that the authority on something that I'm going to set everybody straight, and it's kind of what we already kind of said there. So, or I don't care who I'm going to hurt. This is the truth. So this is the way it is. That kind of.
I love you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to know my heart.
Yeah.
All those.
And buy my book here, where I talk about this more.
Oh, yeah.
LinkedIn bio.
That's right.
Let's talk about our own failings in this, because I think we want people to understand that if, as they watch or listen, that if they've done this, it's not like we're like shame on you,
right.
But hey, I think I don't know. At least I've been there a couple times. So, do you guys have that moment being that guy on social media?
I've got one.
Yeah.
You go?
But you first.
Okay. Well, mine's like, it's going to make it sound like I'm better than I am. Right? So I picked, one of their principles, I think, for all this, how we engage is like one of the 10 commandments, the 9th commandment is don't bear false witness against your neighbor. So when we share political leaning posts on, like, it's only on Facebook, that further whatever political position we might like to hold, whatever that end up being proven false, that's breaking the 9th commandment. When we share something that we don't actually care if it's true or not, or if it's fact checked or whatever, it furthers our pre-existing beliefs. You can do that with theological positions or whatever else. And so I used to, when I was a campus pastor and it was my people that were doing it, I would comment below with all of the links that proven they were wrong. And I would say, hey, stop breaking the 9th commandment on Facebook. And viewed this honestly as like a shepherding thing of like, this is a public domain in which they posted this thing, so I'm going to respond to it in a public way instead of I just started texting people. I didn't stop addressing it because it seemed like it was worth addressing. I didn't like that the people that God had entrusted to me to shepherd and to lead were breaking the 9th commandment on Facebook, which again, non-Christians are watching. Yeah. And so I kept addressing it, but I moved it offline, and it provided a lot more fruitful dialogue.
That's good. So I like that example in terms of what you said, like when is it appropriate, when is it not, or how to, like we're going to get to more of that. But in that example, you still felt you're allowed to feel strongly about something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's just the manner in which that's executed.
Yeah.
And so for you, it did make it sound like you're better. But
yeah,
okay.
So I'll start there.
That's good. And you might have been.
Mine's not as sophisticated. I did well in the early 2000s, the turn of 2010. I made this comment. I still remember when it was, and I made a comment about skinny jeans. And I mean,
I'm already laughing. I don't know what
the backlash I got for saying how skinny jeans are not manly or whatever I said.
Oh boy!
And I got obviously lots of feedback.
That was the peak of the skinny jean.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And so I remember feeling at that time, really and truly, it is something that's laughable.
But it's still up there.
Actually, you can't, because I did delete it because it was not very helpful. And so I remember thinking after it lived on social media.
Did you think when you posted it was going to be helpful?
Yeah,
I
don't. Fire, sin.
Listen, that's the question that we don't ask.
That's the problem I'm sensing here.
Come on, guys. Grace, right? So I beat myself up enough about it. So the thing is that I remember thinking, okay, at the time, this is not obviously it's not helpful. This is not good. And so I pulled it off, and I really at that point made this like, okay, I'm not going to post negative things. You're trying to hold me. I wasn't going to do this. And so I made it the rest of the 2010s, and then 2020 came.
And you wanted to start it off with a bang again?
I guess.
You went the thing last week?
Yes, just last week.
Okay.
Yeah, so I really, and you disagree with me offline, but like I really try to stay very, very positive, and on social media because of that experience in 2010, how negative it was and how it was very divisive. And I made a comment about a local establishment and their practices, and how it's a place of business that I did not like.
Specifically how they practice those things with you
personally
as a person.
Yeah.
And you named them.
And I named gosh, you guys, all right. I'm feeling like my face is turning red.
This is the best podcast
ever. And so it got lots of and I felt vindicated because over half of the response were like, everyone else picked up their pitches.
The echo chamber.
The pitchforks and torches and and so anyway, and then I started feeling, oh man, it's still negative. It's still negative in tone. It's still drawing attention. And then I know that people are going to click and see, obviously, that not only am I a Christ follower, but I'm a pastor at a local church. I'd really started feeling this conviction, like, man. And so then I had this question, and this is part of the conversation we're having today. Do I live with the consequences and keep it posted and just own it? And then maybe make a public apology like underneath, or do I take it down to just take the spotlight away from it, right? So I wrestled with that. And then this past week, I got an email from someone from our church. And I actually am very grateful that this person decided to seek me out as one of our leaders in our ministries. And he just simply said, hey, what would you think about going to the person, and in this case he said the owner, but even the manager or whatever, instead of taking your grievances socially or publicly in social media. I really appreciate that. So when we talk about later how to address it, whatnot. So there you go. There's my big whiff.
And this particular awesome establishment has a generous rain check policy. So if the one time I've complained there, I got 2 free.
Okay. So I have 3 over 4-year span. So you think I can get like 6 or 7 or 8?
I think there's like a statute of limitations. So maybe just stick to the most recent one.
But based on your history there, you're probably in good shape to just keep going back, and it'll add up over time.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. Yeah. So anyway, that's
y'all are terrible.
What about you guys? Do you guys have some social
media? Like, I'm hate tweeting this conversation right now.
What's happening?
Let me just say, it's kind of hard to own it, right? Like I was uncomfortable, obviously going through the process, and then to kind of share it here because you do. It's like in the moment, and you feel vindicated, and in my mind, I'm right.
Right.
Yeah.
But doesn't mean that you should air it out.
And that's the thing, because you're not wrong. Like what you experience, you experience. That really did happen to you.
Right.
It really has happened to other people. But that's the form.
Here's the thing we talk about in my house quite a bit since my daughter was little, which is this is not a question of whether or not this is right. It's a question of whether or not it's wise.
That's good.
Oh boy.
And so we use.
I feel like I'm getting a counseling chair right now.
Right.
No, I mean I'm not just talking about this.
So good.
It's crazy the number of things you can apply to that. I have a 7th grade daughter. A lot of 7th grade girls dress like hoochie mamas. Like you can't even do you have pants on? Like I don't even.
Oh boy.
And we have this conversation at my house a lot. Well, so and so does, and so.
Right.
I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying is it wise?
Yeah.
And so you were right, but perhaps not wise.
Right.
I don't know. But we just talk about that all the time because it deflates the whole. I'm not arguing with you. I promise. I'm not arguing with you.
Yeah.
It's not that it's right or wrong. It's just not wise.
James 3:17, with the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits, impartial and sincere. And a harvest of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. I mean, just that those qualifiers, man. If I did that in all areas of my life would be much better for me and all who interact with me. But with social media, literally, you have to. Yeah. You're there by your. It's one thing in a conversation to kind of get off the rails a little bit. And I'll go, hey, buddy, I'm sorry, I really went too far.
Right.
I'm literally sitting there by myself with my thumbs or a keyboard, and I make the decision to put all that data down and then look at it and then hit enter.
Yeah.
It's like the process, like the mini exit points we have there.
Did you want to share your time? Because I have a question. Based on what you just talked about, I have a question. But
okay, yeah. I mean, for me, if anything, I just like. I mean, you know this about me in life in general. I just like to stir the pot a little bit. So if I see something, I just like to kind of go, let's just see what happens. But then it almost turns into like an experiment for myself, not like a social experiment, like a Jeff experiment. It's like, can I keep this respectful? And I'll bow out if I can.
Spar. Respectful
a little bit, yeah, because I mean that's good. I actually started doing that in seminary because I would get in conversations that were like way above what I had been exposed to yet, and just try to navigate it.
Yeah, right.
So it's been helpful for me, but I do know because I'm a pot stirrer, I can a lot of times look back and go, oh, those two posts, I'm gonna pull those down. Yeah, you just go a little too far.
Yeah, that's good. You were on the track of like putting yourself in the situation where you're about to post something. Like, let's talk about let's help all of us. What are some good practices, as you engage in culture one-on-one personally, but also and particularly behind our phones and keyboards?
I know a couple of pastors that actually have like accountability partners that will check their posts for them before they send them. Like they screenshot it.
That's good.
Hey, is this okay? I mean, I'm not that disciplined, I'll be honest with you. Yeah. I'll have to find a different way to do it because I like to move faster than that.
Yeah, sure.
I probably just admitted way too much, but I think that's a good one. Just some sort of check and balance. Like even if somebody just reading it, once you put it up there, just, hey,
Yeah.
I usually have to try and check myself. Like, what is my purpose in this? Before I hit send, what do I want to come out of this? Is it because I'm just bragging on my kid? Is it because I'm trying to perhaps slide one under at someone else and like because they need to hear this? So is it directed? I generally just try to think, what do I want the outcome to be? And if it's something that I feel like is fine, then I do. And if not, I just think, there's enough out there I don't need to add.
I think even like a little bit of a different, like what you guys are saying is all true. I think of Ephesians 4:29, let no unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only that which is good and for building up. And there's this disconnect where we think, like in real life, we think our words don't actually matter. Like the way Jesus talks about words is they reveal the condition of your heart. And so we see these apologies from public figures all the time where they say, hey, I'm sorry for what I said. It is exactly who you are.
Right.
It's who we are.
Out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks.
So that's words in real life, but then we think of words on a screen as even like a lesser thing, and the Bible just takes that and makes it way higher. But I just think of just time in general, and so like I have a limit on my phone of how many minutes I can engage on social media a day, and then once it's up, it's up. And so time limit. Talking about practical best practices, I can't get in this Facebook politics debate that is only going to do negative things. Like I saw a tweet the other day, Scott Saul is a pastor in Nashville. He said, in 20 years of pastoral ministry, I've never seen not one person come to Christ because they've been scolded by another Christian, either online or in real life. Like it literally does no good. There's never anybody, I don't think anybody who's ever had their mind significantly changed by a Twitter conversation.
Why do you think we do it then? Why is it so intriguing?
Because it's there. I think it can be that easy. It's like I'm here, I'm bored.
Pull out my phone.
Oh, I don't like what they said about that person.
Yeah,
I think too.
I should weigh in.
It goes back, and this kind of goes along with your question, Lori. But I think it goes back to our core values and like that Christ-centeredness. As we practice the discipline of those different core values, and you talked about thinking about your purpose of behind saying something. I go back to if I'm going to center myself on the Lord and be led by His Word and being prayer dependent. You go through all of them. They really apply to our how we're going to react to things. Are we going to react? Are we going to respond?
Right.
And so, praying through it, you filter through some things on a checklist. Ephesians 4:29 is a great one, but I just think of words like peace, unity, restoration, love, peace, wisdom you used earlier. I'm called to be salt and light. Yeah. Does this post have any of that in it?
Is there any edification at all?
But
yeah.
And it's not the right kind.
I like the edification part because is it going to build people up or tear people down? We're called to build people up. Is this going to further the gospel, advance the gospel? Is this going to be glory to God? I mean, we don't want to be like pious holy rollers here, but we really do have to consider these things as we post.
Do you have Ephesians 4 sitting out over there? What does 4:21 say? I was thinking that 4:21 was kind of like we do these things because we know Jesus. Like the things that come after it.
Yeah, so it goes through this list of the flesh of the old life. And then in 20 it says, but that's not how you learned Christ, right? You put off the old self, which belongs to your former manner of life, is corrupt through deceitful desires. Be renewed in the spirit of your mind, putting on the new self.
I think it's that renewal thing is what impacts the stuff that comes afterwards, which is the don't lie and don't let unwholesome talk come out of your mouth. And I think there's a lot of renewing our minds. There's a lot of throwing off that old self every day that has to happen. For me personally, it doesn't happen a lot with social media because I don't have a lot of time for that. But in my interactions at all, if I don't throw off that old self, is that impulse one. Where I just I react and I just think that's, for me, I have to just think this is not, that's the old self. She's not attractive.
That's good.
Well, we kind of use social media almost like we used to use a newspaper. I mean, I think now it's like, okay, you might have 3 hours a day. I heard a stat today that the average American spends 3 hours a day on social media. My dad probably spent an hour and a half in the morning reading the newspaper every day. And I promise you they spend at least a couple hours every night watching the news.
Talking about it at
One
the
of the first things I do, I hop on Twitter, and I don't even look at the feed. I swipe over to the news. That's kind of where I get my news. I mean, it's, whatever. But it's just, I mean, it's just kind of our new newspaper, our new little interaction with the world out there a little bit. But it's so right there. It's like anybody can write an editorial, and it doesn't have to be proofed. It doesn't have to be vetted at all. And it's just out there in the world.
We have time for this. I want to throw this out here. So someone's listening, someone's watching, and say, these guys, these jokers, about freedom of speech. What about that? Like. Let's talk to that. Let's talk to that.
I had this conversation this week, actually. Okay. So a distant, connection got. It's like somebody I know, but not super personally, but is a volatile blogger, right? And so got a post deleted and their account suspended for a while, and was, complaining about this. And my first thought is like, and so raising the issue of free speech, and it's like, well, Facebook is a company. Like, they don't owe you. Like, they don't owe you free speech. What you're getting when you engage in social media is not unbiased perspective. It is they're using every algorithm for every conversation you've ever had, every piece of luggage you've ever bought, to put in front of you the things they think you want to see to engage more, and they're programmed to make you mad. And so this idea of like that arena does not owe you free speech. And so just even from like a common sense perspective, that's not where you go to get that kind of stuff. Now we can talk about like what is wise to engage in, what we should talk about, what we shouldn't talk about. Like one of the things for me is like, I don't feel the need to post and comment on everything. Like it must be exhausting, especially in like progressive Christianity, to feel like you have to comment on every tragedy, every political injustice. And I care about those things a lot. And I know that God's heart cares about those things.
But if you don't post about it,
well,
then you're...
So I don't feel the need to let my Twitter feed be the exact representation of every commentary on injustice in the world.
But you mentioned progressive. I mean, this is on the opposite end. The extreme fundies are the same way. It's like if you live at one pole or the other, it's like you've got to. Like there's this innate desire to pull people over there and not let people just kind of live in that middle area where they're just kind of looking at the variable options and inputs and things like that. I was thinking though about the word freedom. Thought of Galatians 5. It's like, do not let your freedom, or do not use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another.
That's good.
So if we look at that platform, various platforms, an opportunity to serve one another, love one another, model Christ likeness to one another. What kind of pictures are you sending? Is that loving your neighbor as yourself? Is that treating her like a sister or him like a brother? What types of posts are you putting up there? Are you hailing Caesar? Are you hailing Christ? You know what I mean? It's like all those things. It's all spoken about in here, very different context, but we can definitely extrapolate truth from Scripture, and that intersects really neatly into how we use this vehicle. It's such a great tool because there's all this bad stuff that happens, but the opportunities for gospel, the spread of the gospel. I mean, in seconds, the gospel can go further in our day and age than it ever has in any time in history. What an amazing tool.
How many people do y'all think are on social media globally? There's like 7.1 billion people on the planet.
I'm so bad in numbers, but
A lot.
3 billion people. It's almost half. So think of all the third world countries, and
I was gonna say,
you see these weird.
I would have said millions, not billions.
Yeah, 3 billion people are on social media right now. So half the world is connected to us in your pocket, and that's the potential. That doesn't mean we have 3 billion Twitter followers, but that is the pro column. It is this incredible tool, but it's a tool you got to turn off. Like when people get so overwhelmed by criticism on social media, it's like you have everything you need to turn it off. Like none of that's happening in real life. You and I had a really simple conversation about this negative experience in real life. It was 3 minutes and kind of moved on. But I'm sure on social media it felt like it was this huge thing.
Right.
And then the arguments against social media use are 2 years ago, there was a new study that came out that psychologists proved that social media is not just revealing the sinfulness we already had. Like it's not just revealing covetousness and envy and jealousy and cynicism, it's now causing it. And so the more that we engage in this, the higher things like suicide, anxiety, depression, all those rates are a direct correlation with excessive social media use. And so there's arguments for and against. And so we got to wade into those things with wisdom. You mentioned salt, and salt prevents decay. It doesn't stop it. We can't stop decay in social media, but we can step in and prevent it and point people up above it.
Hashtag subject matter expert.
No.
You've done some stuff with the interns, right? Don't you have like some social media
guidelines?
Yeah, we've taken them through some really helpful books, like 12 Ways Your Phone is Changing You by Tony Rinke. Tony Rinke is one of the editors of desiringgod.org, and he is probably the most clear, like especially in our camp of like loving the Bible, loving the church. He's really sharp on this stuff. He wrote a new book called Competing Spectacles, where he talks about how we are people designed to like awe at something, and what we're awing at now is the stuff on the Instagram Explore page and what Instagram says we need or have. And so his stuff is really good.
What would you say is the age range for that? Like if there are people listening and they've got teenagers that want to read that book, is that accessible?
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, there's an audiobook version that's really good too, if that's more helpful. And now we're at the point where social media is not a young person's thing. Like if you go to a restaurant and look at who's eating chips and salsa, it is predominantly older people now on their phones, not just younger people. Because they want to talk with their friends, and older folks just want to read everything. They want to read the news. They want to read sports. It's like they're fine. Like my grandparents are on Facebook, and there are now more dead users on Facebook than alive people. So Facebook is a dying platform.
My daughter calls it Mom Book.
Yeah.
I would like to take this moment though, just for the edification of some of our older watchers and listeners.
Nice.
When you demand that I share something 5 times, I'm not going to.
No.
No one's going to share that page because it says that. Anyway,
it's good.
Please continue.
I don't know where I was going.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, that's all right. I think, though, what we should do is just give some brief encouragement to those who are looking at that guy and what they do in response. What's a good redemptive way to help and love that person well enough, not just say, oh, they're just idiots and they're stupid, but how do you properly engage them and redeem the situation?
I typically only do this with people I really love and who I care. I care about the potential of how what they posted is going to impact them. And so that's generally my barometer is, do I love this person enough to generally offline say, hey, I think you might have misunderstood what you just shared. And that's generally what I'll lead with. Because I actually do feel that way. People will share stuff that they have not really read. They haven't looked at the source of where it came from to understand what they're really sharing. And so generally that's where I'll go, is just say, hey, did you know the source of what you shared came from such and such and so and so? I just thought it was something that you would want to consider, having associated with you. That sometimes goes well, it sometimes doesn't. But
I think 2 things for me. First is to pray and then to act. And so I pray the same prayer every day. God, help me see people the way that you see them. And so if God looks at that person, the image of God is in them. And if they're a child of God, they are one for whom Christ died. So eternal value on that guy who is firing off political whatever stuff on social media. Like, God cherishes that person. He doesn't look at us as ministry leaders as not one iota more valuable to him than this dude who's in his mom's basement firing tweets at whoever. And so like it's really pausing to pray and say, God, help me see this person like exactly as you see them, but then to act. So like I do the same thing, and maybe this is just the difference in being like in a shepherding position over people, but I don't let that stuff go when I see it. I reach out to people, not in the comment thread anymore, but I'll send somebody a text and say, hey, I want to grab coffee and talk about this because you shared this and I know you. That doesn't seem to line up with who I know who you are in Christ. So help me understand maybe what I'm missing, but let's talk about this. And so to pray and then to act, and some of us probably do more or less one or the other. I try to do both.
Yeah. You guys both kind of took it more from the if you know somebody thing. I'm going to take it from the opposite, almost if I don't know somebody. And it's just somebody that I only know and engage with through social media. Like these are people that live wherever and they're famous or they have influence or they just have enough followers that I follow them to, that kind of thing. The unfollow button is a huge means of grace for any Christ followers. Like, and the way I use that is if I find myself, and this takes a little self-reflection and a whole lot of honesty, both of which take time, which I'm not good at. But when I do take the time, if I find myself forming, like just having an opinion, or just like every time I see this guy, I immediately want to react. Like just unfollow, just unfollow, or snooze for 30 days, or whatever your platform of choice is. But I think that's one of the really cool things and one of the detriments of social media is it does connect us to people that we will never meet. But there's people, like I had a prof at Dallas that we connect on social media a year before I ever met him in person. When we met in person, we sat down, it's like we've been old friends. We had so much interaction. Like you really do form friendships. For people to say that relationships don't actually happen online, they really do. I mean, we're as connected as Paul was to people that he was writing letters to back in the day that he never met, right? I mean, that's kind of the same thing. But we have to steward those things well, because those are gifts. It's a relationship, but if that relationship can't be maintained peacefully and love, assuming the best, if we can't go to the other person and know that's going to be, you don't have a good, healthy relationship, and you should end that relationship.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think we, as the person who's quote unquote judging that guy, we need to make sure we don't become that guy. And so I think at the end of the day, the same encouragement we gave the person, that guy, is the same encouragement I give to the person who's judging that guy, which is filter your response through prayer, peace, unity, restoration, the gospel, salt and light.
Can I offer one more just practical suggestion? I think like all things, it's just good to take a step back. And so that's for 2 weeks or 30 days or 60 days or a year. And it's super refreshing. Like you're like, all of a sudden, I don't actually care about this stuff as much as I thought I did when I was seeing it every 6 minutes, which is how often we check our phones. And so you zoom out from that, you get perspective on what kind of actually matters. You get that extra time, and not forsaking the spiritual disciplines in the process of using social media, engaging in this way is really important. But just take a step back, take a detox. And you don't have to announce it. You don't have to especially write the blog post coming out of it of here's the 15 things I learned, because you're using this offline thing to further your online. Like, don't do that. But yeah, just unplug. And you don't owe people your Twitter thoughts or your Facebook things. And
from a practical standpoint, when I do that, I just take it off my phone.
Yeah.
If I still want to check it on a desktop, I might sit down and do that, but I'm certainly not going to sit down at a desktop and do it every 6 minutes, right? So that's generally what I do when I'm like, I need to I'm just take it off my phone.
What's a desktop?
Nice.
It's if you're a writer, you have to have one.
You actually type like this. And crazy.
There's lots of layers to this, and actually, I think we probably should come back and address some of these other layers that people sure will have questions, and so we would invite you to send those questions in. But thanks, guys, for the conversation. Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us today, and I hope you leave with a fresh perspective about your interactions on social media this week. If you have a question for us or feedback on the show, you can contact us at equip@austinridge.org. And if you haven't yet, we'd love for you to share and subscribe. See you next time.